Imagine spending 10 million American tax dollars on a study to prove something that just didn't pan out. Then, instead of sharing the results, you bury them. Why? Because revealing the truth would threaten a cherished ideology. That's exactly what happened with the taxpayer-funded study on puberty blockers for kids run by Dr. Johanna Olsen-Kennedy, leaving parents and children in the dark about treatments that could permanently impact their lives forever.
I was prescribed puberty blockers 30 minutes into my appointment after being out for 4 months.
First appointment?
Yes.
With?
Dr. Johanna Olsen-Kennedy at Los Angeles Children's Hospital.
So who is this Dr. Johanna Olsen-Kennedy, the one that's leading this suppressed study? Well, as I looked into her, I discovered some hidden truths that not only revealed some horrific testimonies from some of her former patients, but also revealed how undivided loyalty to an ideology can blind us to the truth and destroy lives in the name of helping others. So this is Dr. Johanna Olsen-Kennedy, one of the most prominent transgender healthcare experts who runs the largest transgender youth clinic in the United States. Over the years, she's been very vocal about her promotion of puberty blockers for minors with gender dysphoria, which stave off the permanent physical changes like developing breast or the voice deepening. And while some see her as a hero for trans rights, horrifying accounts from former patients paint a different picture, one that's led others to strongly believe that she should be in prison. These criticisms are based on stories like this one, from this 20-year-old woman named Clementine who revealed what Dr. Kennedy told her parents.
So she convinced them that they had two options, a dead daughter or a live son.
Yes, she did use those exact words.
And to make matters worse, Clementine also described the immediate results of her first 30-minute appointment with Dr. Kennedy.
When did they put you on testosterone?
I was 13.
And when did you have a double mastectomy?
I had a double mastectomy at 14. I'm currently going through the process of getting reconstructive surgery, but it was much harder to get surgery for that than it was to actually get the original top surgery.
Clementine also implied that she's in the process of suing Dr. Kennedy, saying this entire process to be a living nightmare. But another thing that makes this story so disturbing is that Dr. Kennedy seems to think that it's not a big deal.
Actually, people choose colleges to go to. Actually, people make life-altering decisions in adolescence. All the time. All the time. And honestly, most of them are good. But so what we do know is that adolescents actually have the capacity to make a reasoned, logical decision. And here's the other thing about chest surgery. If you want breasts at a later point in your life, you can go and get them.
So Clementine goes on to talk about the fact that she's likely infertile now, highlighting the seriousness of this doctor's decisions, which shouldn't be decided in a surface-level 30-minute meeting. And Clementine's case is just one example, a variation of a story that is not at all uncommon.
I am dealing with genital atrophy.
I have blood clots in my urine.
And all of my joints ache.
We must prevent this nightmare from happening to any more young people.
Now, these cases reveal a disturbing pattern where life-altering procedures are being decided in short consultations with lasting consequences.
My parents were told that the options were transition or suicide.
I cannot even cry or raise my voice. I was silenced.
I was misled to believe that these procedures were perfectly safe.
And Dr. Kennedy's actions have left many questioning not just her methods, but whether her decisions are driven by science or by a commitment to an ideology. However, she's quick to imply here that her personal decisions here are objective and based purely on medical science, and that we need to keep politics out of it.
This lives in the medical world, and it has to stop being a political and religious issue.
Now, is that so? Well, this brings us to the other reasons for why people have seriously called her objectivity into question. So, Dr. Kennedy was awarded nearly 10 million tax dollars to conduct a study that was supposed to be a significant step into better understanding the impact that puberty blockers have on the mental and physical health of children with gender dysphoria. The study started in 2015 and followed the development of 95 children from all across the country from ages 8 to 16. And this study was definitely needed as an increasing number of Americans are skeptical about transitioning children.
In a Washington Post poll, 68% of Americans are against providing puberty blockers to children 10 to 14 years old. 58% are against hormone treatments for those 15 to 17 years old.
So Dr. Kennedy's project became increasingly relevant since this study right here, a 2011 study based on research coming out of the Netherlands, played a huge role in why we give children puberty blockers in the US today. This study concluded that puberty blockers did improve mental health and overall well-being for children with gender dysphoria. And referring to this study, this article reports that this older Dutch study had found that puberty blockers improved well-being, results that inspired clinics around the world to regularly prescribe the medications as part of what is now called gender-affirming care. And when it comes to Dr. Kennedy, the grants for her study were awarded with the hopes of seeing if we could replicate those same results here in America or not. So Dr. Kennedy led a team of researchers with the initial hypothesis that puberty blockers would have a positive impact on the mental health of children, reducing stress and improving their overall well-being. And she and her researchers followed the development of these children for 2 years. However, it's now 9 years later, and the results of the study have yet to be published, leading scientists and taxpayers to wonder what the holdup is. Despite its importance to families and patients, Dr. Kennedy shocked the world when she admitted to having been purposely withholding the results of the study. So, why would she purposely suppress her findings? Well, when asked about it, she replied by saying, "I do not want our work to be weaponized," referring to the fact that she was worried that the results would be weaponized for political purposes, which could result in puberty blockers being banned. So in other words, she simply didn't like the results and really only wanted one outcome, which is the opposite of how science is supposed to be done. And that wasn't even everything that she was hiding. But before we get into that, we have to first acknowledge just how much personal bias impacts the way that we see everything, from the studies that we listen to the news outlets that we read. And that's why I'm happy to have Ground News as a sponsor of today's video. Ground News gathers articles from over 50,000 sources and shows you how they're covered across the political spectrum, letting you see the full picture. Take for instance this story that we're talking about today with Dr. Kennedy. So far it's been covered by 45 sources, but less than 10% of the left-leaning outlets have covered it. And here you can also see which outlets are covering it. And if you go over here to the bias comparison section, you can see how the right, the center, and the left are all covering the same story. By comparing these different perspectives, you can see just how much the narrative changes depending on who's covering it. Another feature that I love is called the blind spot feed, which highlights stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. So, for example, only 18% of left-leaning outlets have covered this story about the world's most accurate economists predicting that Trump will win the election, revealing a huge blind spot. So Ground News has become a valuable tool for me, especially as a Christian seeking truth and integrity in media. So if you want to try Ground News today, go to groundnews.com/whatdayoumean and get 50% off of unlimited access to the Vantage plan. All right, now back to the video. So we left off with Dr. Kennedy admitting that she suppressed the results of her study out of fears that it would be weaponized by politics. And possibly realizing that she made a mistake in admitting that truth, she went on to further justify her response by giving an explanation for why the results didn't match her expected outcome. She said, "They're in really good shape when they came in, and they're in really good shape after 2 years." Basically saying that the results didn't change because the kids were already happy. However, this claim seems to be contradicted by this right here. What you're looking at is her initial findings that were taken at the beginning of that same study, which were published in 2022. This initial report showed that 1 in 4 of the children had clinically significant levels of depression, anxiety, and thoughts of self-deletion, and 8% have already had a previous attempt on their own lives. So the data shows that many of these children showed signs of being mentally unwell at the beginning, contradicting Dr. Kennedy's explanation that they were already happy. She then went on to give another explanation for why she never published the results. She stated that she intends to publish the data, but that her team had also been delayed because the NIH had cut some of the project's funding. She attributed that cut to politics as well, which the NIH has denied. And here's the government's receipt that shows just how much she received from her study, and if you add up all of these numbers, it appears that she received about $9.7 million. So despite saying that science shouldn't be influenced by politics, she apparently chose not to reveal the results of the study due to politics. Despite claiming that the reason why the kids weren't showing improvement after being put on puberty blockers was because the kids were already happy, her initial findings showed that at least a quarter of the kids were not. And despite her claim that there was a delay to release the study due to loss of funding by the NIH, well, the receipts that the NIH provided report otherwise. So these apparent contradictions by Dr. Kennedy reveals that her actions are likely motivated by a desire to protect an ideology rather than discovering objective truth. And while she publicly insists on keeping politics out of medical decisions, she actually exposed serious concerns about bias in public health research, proving that when truth becomes secondary to ideology, everyone suffers. Okay, so what we've seen so far in this video isn't just an isolated issue. While Dr. Kennedy's case may be extreme, the tendency to let our loyalties and personal beliefs shape how we interpret and view the truth is a problem that we all wrestle with. Whether it's our politics, our personal interests, or deeply held ideologies, all of us are prone to filter truth in ways that confirm what we already want to believe or to protect our loyalties. I'm sure every single one of us, myself included, has shared something on social media that wasn't true and didn't bother to fact check it because we wanted it to be true, since it helped to reinforce what we already wanted to believe about how evil our political opponents are. But the problem is, when we place our loyalty to ideology above a commitment to the truth, we risk becoming blind to reality and distort our own integrity in the process. And in today's digital world, this has become a far bigger issue. Even for someone as smart as Elon Musk, who seemingly accidentally shared several false claims on X, including an AI of Kamala Harris that he thought was real. His instincts are the same as all of ours in today's climate. We instantly believe something that we see when it aligns with our preconceived ideology, rather than taking the time to fact check it to see if it's actually true or not. And although this is a really big problem for the world, this is an even bigger problem for Christians, since Christians should be lovers of truth first before any and all ideologies. But given that this is a problem that all of us share, how can any of us remove the bias enough to see truth objectively? And if our loyalty to ideologies or personal beliefs can so easily blind us, is it even possible for us to look at truth with complete honesty? Well, the answer to that question lies in just how much our loyalty can be to something that's even greater than any ideology, which is a loyalty to Christ, who said that he was the truth himself. When our primary commitment is to Jesus, we can look at truth without fear, because as Christians, we know that all truth is God's truth. We don't need to suppress or hide or alter what we find in order to protect the human agenda. Instead, we find true freedom in aligning with the ultimate source of truth himself. In fact, knowing that all truth is God's truth allows us to pursue it fully and openly wherever it leads, without compromising integrity. And even more, on a personal level, we can accept uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our faults without justifying them, since we know the reason that we're saved is not based on how good we are, but only on how good Christ is. So that leaves us with no good reason to justify the ugly truths about ourselves to others, or even to justify those faults to ourselves. Only with Christ at the center can we live lives with true freedom and the courage to embrace the truth without fear. And by the way, if you didn't know, I read a lot, and I've read a lot of incredible books in my life, but I hardly ever recommend books to you guys that can help you navigate this complex world. So I decided that I'm going to start trying to include book recommendations for you guys in my videos going forward. So check the video description below for books that I believe pair well with this video, and then go ahead and check out this video that YouTube's algorithm believes that you'll like. All right, let's see if they're right, and I'll see you over there. Thanks for watching.